everyone has their healing work here to do. Even if you're like, yeah, my family was perfect, it's great. I guarantee that you still face challenges. And maybe you don't have as much work to do as other people do in this lifetime. I don't know what that's about. But if things aren't working for you inside your business or with your ADHD, and you're setting your life and your business up the ADHD way, maybe you're even doing some IFS or some other somatic healing approach, and you're not seeing any movement, I would encourage you to get really curious, to sit in the silence if you can tolerate it. Hi, I'm Jen Barnes, and you're about to experience how to ditch the old ways of doing things, embrace your neurodivergence, learn tips and tricks to function optimally, and love yourself, neurodivergence and all. Welcome to the Self-Loved Woman podcast. Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to share something that's a little bit more present for me. And sure, I'm going through another layer of this. I've worked through a lot of layers of it. Usually I share things that I've come a long way through and tend to not pop up as much for me anymore. Not that they never do, but I tend to share things that I'm like, oh, okay, I've got this. Though I will be honest, as soon as I say I've got something, I tend to notice things come up. I'm like, the universe is testing me to see if I really have it. But then I usually can navigate through it a little more easily. But today I want to share something that is something I still work through relatively frequently. And it's something that I work through a lot of layers around, and I'm working through another layer right now. And this is how we figure out what is showing up in our life and what it means about what we could be doing differently. And so what I mean by this and the way it's popping up in my life or tends to pop up in my life is during a launch. Launches, if you've owned a business, that owning a business is like one of the largest personal growth activities, I guess, things you could do in your life next to parenting, because you're constantly faced with yourself because you're the owner. And so the buck stops with you. And so if something isn't working, it's like, well, here's a mirror, take a peek. And one piece of it is that sometimes we can do everything right, and right with air quotes around it, because there's not really a right, but we can do things with our ADHD. We can do things with our business that are kind of the way that we envision being the most effective way to do them. And stuff can still go wrong, or it still doesn't work, or there's problems that seem to inhibit us from growing our business the way we want to. And I'm noticing not just in myself how common this is, but I'm noticing this in the clients I work with. I've certainly seen it in my psychotherapy clients over the decades of being in the field of mental health. I certainly see it in the entrepreneurial circles I'm in. And it's been popping up a lot for me, both around my own stuff as well as what others are going through. And it's this idea that when we bump into problems, sure, there's the surface problem, but then beneath it, there's like, what is energetically drawing this to me? And I want to be clear. I'm in no way like blaming trauma survivors for someone beating you or harming you. That's not what we're talking about here. So I just want to take that off the table. That is not the conversation, right? If you have a chronic illness, I'm not like, oh, it's your own fault. That's not what we're talking about here at all. And it's not even about blaming, but it's about getting curious about what the lesson is, about why something is coming to you now and what the work is for you now when it comes to you. And so an example for me has been during a lot of my launches, I will end up with these tech problems. And it's like, oh my gosh, like what the heck is going on here? And when I sit with that and I journal about it and I work with the inner parts of myself around it, what often comes up is that is, I don't want to say like a sign, but that's an indication that there's something inside of me that doesn't feel ready for the next step my business needs or the next step I want for my business, that there's some other stuff that needs to happen first to prepare me for that. And for me, that tends to show up in tech issues inside of a launch. It can even show up in tech issues in general. And believe me, I'm not saying that like every time we have a tech issue, it's the universe talking to us. I get it. Like sometimes shit just happens. A lot of times when it happens in a launch, if I really sit with what's going on and I journal about it and I lean in and get curious about the parts coming up for me, I can get to a deeper understanding of what's beneath that tech issue. Because sure, that is an external thing, but in some way I'm energetically drawing that to myself. And oftentimes there's a reason. There's a reason. So the important thing is if you're going through this, if you're like, I'm doing everything right with my ADHD and my business still isn't working, or I'm doing my IFS and I'm not seeing a change in my business, or I'm doing this and my business is still struggling. I get it. It's hard because we're like, I'm doing all the right things. Believe me, I get it. I do quote unquote all the right things all the time. I've got my nice morning routine that's locked in, really supportive, connects me to spirit, connects me to my health and wellness, nutritious eating. I get my nice 8 hours of sleep every night. Yes, I understand if you're a mom. I'm not trying to shove that in your face. You can live vicariously right now if that's not where you're at with things. I'm not here to tell you that you have to figure that out for yourself. We all have to figure out what our priorities are. But I have a lot of things really locked in to do the work. And sometimes still, I'll be faced with bumps in the road. And on this most recent launch, if you were in it, you know that my links that came from the platform where I do my hosting of the event were broken, not someone's first choice. Thankfully, I had experienced tech problems with this platform before. And so I had also created other ways for people to get in, not even knowing consciously that that would be a problem. I just figured I'd have backup plans for backup plans, right? It was just what I chose to do. And sure, it impacted people, it pissed people off. If you were one of those people, I'm very sorry. And the reality is some of this was the universe being like, can you handle this? It also had me going in and thinking about, why am I drawing myself? Why am I drawing this to myself right now? So number one, can I handle it? What I noticed is I was in a much different headspace around it this time. I mean, yeah, I was angry at the platform because they have continuous problems and I'm not the only one who experiences them. But it's like I was able to work through those feelings more quickly and problem solve effective solutions and got it going faster. And so it was like, yes, I'm practicing what I preach and I'm able to do this and I can handle this level of problem. One of my business coach, mentor type people that I follow and in some of his programs often talks about that our business will grow at the rate that we're able to handle the problems that come with that size of business, right? And that's not exactly what he says, but that's kind of the main idea. And so it's like, yes, I can handle this level of problem. I got it. Yes, no problem. I mean, it wasn't like my first choice. Like, believe me. But it was like, okay, I got this. This is what I'm going to do. We fix it, move on. And I've taken some time to unpack what is actually going on. Why did I draw this to me this time? Why is this showing up in my life? And one piece of it could be some of that sunk cost fallacy, right? Like I spent a lot of money on the lifetime version of this platform. It was pitched as this amazing thing and has not been this amazing thing. And so I'm like, no, I have to make this work. And some of it, I was getting stuck in that, which now I'm like, yeah, we're done. We're not using this platform for our live launches. We can use it for evergreen things later. But some of it was I was in that sunk cost fallacy where I was continuing something that wasn't working because I had spent so much money and time and energy on it that I felt like it needed to continue, right? So it's like, yes, that's a great reminder of that fallacy because that's what it's called. Also, there's a deeper level to it. And that required me to sit with the parts of me coming up around what happens if my launch goes well? What happens when I have the clients that I want from this launch? What happens when my business grows in that way? And what I want you to consider is the same thing for yourself. So if you're in a place where you're like, I'm doing all the right things for my ADHD and for my business, I'm doing everything I should be doing, and nothing's working, it may be time to do some deeper work around this. Sit with your journal, maybe go for a walk or sit in nature. Ask yourself the question, what will happen when I have this success that I'm looking for? When you have this amount of clients, when you have this amount of money. And there will be quote unquote good things that happen from that. And there will be not so good things that happen from that. And that's the part that is harder to see, but that is actually the more important piece. One of the things I'm trained in is motivational interviewing from my time as a therapist. And I mean, I'm still a therapist. I'm trained in motivational interviewing. This is my coaching business, so there's that. But anyone can use motivational interviewing. And one of the things about motivational interviewing is we get really curious about motivation. We get curious about what are the barriers to something happening for us, to us being able to do something. And we used to have this chart, I guess, for lack of a better word. It was like a box with 2 columns, 2 rows, right? It was like these 4 boxes in a box, right? So you draw like this grid essentially. And one of the things is this thing happens that you want. And one of the things is this thing doesn't happen that you want. And then it's like you consider the good things if that happens and the not so good things. And so you think about what are the good things about this thing happening and what are the not so good things about it not happening. Those two are very similar and they tend to be easier to come up with. And then you think about what are the not so good things about it happening and or what are the good things about it not happening. And again, those two tend to be similar. And this can be dicey because that actually really makes you dig into the deeper layers. Like, let's say you are trying to build your business and you're trying to get clients. Let's say you have a coaching business and you want one-to-one coaching clients or one-to-one therapy clients or whatever it is. And you're having the hardest time getting clients to you. Well, what are the good things about having clients? Well, obviously, you get to do the work you came here to do. You get to help people. You have revenue in your business. Like, that's important. There's all kinds of good things, but there's also some not so good things about it. And this is the hard part because we don't want to admit this to ourselves. But there may be a part of you inside that's like, here's a not good thing. I have to work more hours if I have clients. Because if you have clients or more clients than you have now, you're going to have to work more hours than if you don't have those clients. Because you're going to have to keep working hours to bring clients to you and work with the new clients that you have. And so, yes, you want that. Like, that's a good thing, but it's more work. So for a part of you, you might be like, I don't know that we want that. Or for example, let's say you want to have more Instagram followers and to grow your list. Like, you want to grow your email list so that you have the ability to connect with more people that you might be able to help someday. That's great. And it's like, oh my gosh, because then you have the potential to have impact on more people and really help them. But think about some of the not so good things. One that comes to mind immediately that I hear from people is when you start to put yourself out there, guess what happens? You're going to be faced with some people who don't like you. And if it's on social media, more likely than not, there's going to be a couple people that express that dislike in very unpleasant ways, even hateful ways. And so some of having yourself out there is great. It's exciting. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm helping these people. But then you have the sting of when someone says something shitty. It's like, and now you have to deal with that problem. And like my mentor says, the problems you're able to handle is the level at which you're able to do business. Well, if you can't handle this problem, then you're probably not going to attract more clients or more followers or more on your list, because the more people you have, that's going to increase the likelihood that you're going to have negative commenters. Hopefully not. I mean, like, I hope not. Don't manifest that. It doesn't have to be. But the chances are good because social media sometimes can be kind of a dumpster fire. Not that I want to put that limiting belief in our head, but if we're honest, people just forget that there's humans on the other side and say whatever's in their head at the time and can be reactive sometimes if they have big feelings. So like, that's one of the not so good things about having more followers or a bigger list. So when you are getting stuck with your ADHD or your business, this can be an important piece of the work. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying ADHD doesn't have any challenges that come with it or that a big piece of it isn't your ADHD. Like, for sure, the way our executive functioning is does not match how the world is set up and designed. The current world was not designed for our ADHD brains. And who knows, maybe someday the world will accommodate that or even be designed differently because who knows, maybe enough of us will procreate and there'll be a majority of us. So the world works out. I mean, who knows? I don't want to make it an us versus them thing. But in all actuality, right now, for us to function, our brains don't match the way the world is. So we have to create our own ways of doing things. And sometimes that can create extra work. It can be tiring. It can be hard. Sometimes we can get stuck. And for sure, that's valid and real. It's just that a lot of times that's not the only thing. You've heard me talk a lot about invisible or inner obstacles holding us back. And this is just another way to look at it, another piece of it. Because a lot of times we have a part of us that, yeah, there's parts of us who are pumped as all hell about these exciting things happening. But there are other parts sitting in the background going, oh no, we are not ready for that, sister. No way. And until you can get those parts that are sitting in the background to trust you enough that you've got this, they are going to find ways to make it not work for you. And it will seem like those things are things outside of your control. Sometimes, I mean, sometimes it'll be very obvious. All of a sudden, you have a hard time getting out of bed. You have a hard time motivating yourself. That might be more obvious that there's something inside of you that's like, nope, don't want to. But then I got to tell you, this is my secret hack. This is a new thing I'm doing. I've been doing it for like a month or so. I got one of those, well, I can't even think of it was, but like natural light alarm clocks. So like you can set it for how many minutes before your alarm goes off that it starts to bring like sunlight into your room using the light feature on the alarm. And so I set it for 20 minutes prior. And I swear to you, I am awake when my alarm goes off in the best way, though. Like not in a, oh my gosh, like my alarm scared the crap out of me, but in a truly awake way. So if one of the things that you're bumping into is a part of you that is not wanting to get out of bed because it's too much to do what you're trying to do, one solution is to try one of these alarm clocks. Also, you could look at other sleep issues. Like if you have a sleep disorder, that's legit, right? If you legitimately have a sleep disorder, it might be time to get tested for that, or you could have sleep apnea. So make sure you're using whatever device you have for that. But sometimes we don't have any of that. And we just have a hard time getting out of bed because there's a part of us that's like, oh no, we are not doing this big thing because it's too scary. Because if we go that big, then we're going to have other stuff to deal with and we cannot handle that. And so some of this inner work is spotting that and really getting granular about what is the concern if I did this? Like, what are the not so good things that would happen if I was able to grow my list, if I was able to have the clients or income I wanted? What are some of the not so good things? And what are some of the good things about not having that? If you're growing a business, you still have a full-time job, you have maybe some security, some stability. Yeah, you may not like your full-time job or maybe sucking the life out of you. I don't know. Or maybe you're just ready for a change, whatever it is. There's a reason why you're growing your business though, right? But that job is security and stability. And there are parts of you inside that probably love that. And it can be really scary for those parts to have you have success in your business. And so a lot of times it's important to work with those parts so they trust that you've got this. And sometimes, it might be doing this in a, I don't know if measured is the word I want, but kind of an intentional way where you're not just like throwing caution to the wind. Okay, I quit and I have no clients. Here we go. Like that might not be the most intentional or responsible way to move from employment to owning a business unless you have another way to draw in income. Some people might just really be good at manifesting money. And so I'm not going to get in the way of whatever you have around that. Some people can really do that and that works for them. But sometimes people are like, there's no way I could do that. I have too many parts of me that would freak out. And when we come with freaked out energy, inviting people to work with us, it's kind of a hard sell. Or getting people to trust us when we don't trust ourselves, that's a really hard sell. So a big piece of figuring out like, oh my gosh, I'm doing all these things right for my ADHD and my business and it's still not working, is figuring out what is the secondary gain of it not working. And that requires radical honesty. That requires you getting really clear on like, ooh, what is this? And I'm going to tell you what, I've been doing this work for a long time. And so those layers used to be kind of easy to spot. They were kind of obvious. And now it's so much deeper. It's no longer that surfacey stuff. Not that the other stuff is surfacey, it's all deep. But it's no longer like, oh, then I wouldn't have as much free time. It tends to be much deeper. And so as we do this work, we might think like, oh, nothing, I'm perfectly fine. But then it's like, but then why isn't this happening? And for me, I refuse to accept that it's just I'm a random victim of technology in the world. To me, where is the lesson? What am I drawing in? And who knows, maybe when you do this work and you really look at it and you get really honest with yourself, you might be like, seriously, Jen, it's nothing. Okay, well, then there has to be some other way to problem solve what's happening because what you're doing is ineffective. If you're in the place where it's ineffective, right? If you're like, but it's still not working, well, something isn't working then. And then it's time to look at how you're approaching things. But more often than not, in the entrepreneurs I know and work with, there's something inside holding it back. And it's usually no one's first choice to hear that because that actually requires some deeper work. But I'm telling you, it is work that is well worth it. So that's all I got for you today. This may or may not have been something you want to hear, but I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to help you grow. So I hope you know that it comes from a place of love and compassion and know that I'm doing this work myself, just continual layers of it. I think we're all always doing this work. I'm kind of leery of people who say that they're done with the work. They did their therapy, they did their inner work. I was reading the book I'm reading on Tantra yoga philosophy, not the sex practices, but more the Tantra, the yoga practices, the meditation, stuff like that. And one of the things that is by, I think you pronounce his name Jorg Feuerstein. I don't think you pronounce it George, but it's spelled George Feuerstein. One of the things he talks about is the four levels of, or four kind of stages of human development. And that there's this stage of when we're young and we're growing and we're learning about the world and how to be in the world. And then we have this stage of productivity where we're having a family and doing all that stuff. And then there's the next phase where we're kind of starting to come away from those attachments as much, starting to get a little deeper and doing more spiritual practices. And then we have that final phase of life where we're really getting to be enlightened. And in this book, he talks about in our current day and age in the West, we have nothing that really aligns with those last two stages. That very few people are fully going to be in those stages in the West because of the way we exist inside of society. There may be some people, I'm not here to tell you who's enlightened and who's not. Like, I just think I got no business doing that. But to think about what that means is we always are doing our work. And I don't know what it's like for enlightened people. I don't know if they still do their work or if they're just floating around on a cloud. I don't know how that works. I'm not there to tell you. But what I do know is for all of the rest of us, there's layers. And we can choose to do this work or not. Personally, what lines up with my values, and you don't have to believe this at all. You can be like, Jen, that's a bunch of crap. I believe that we are here to learn and grow. I believe that our soul chose this life. And maybe to some degree or other, I'm not saying like you chose the shitty things that happened to you in your early life as a child. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. I'm not getting involved in that. I have no idea. But sometimes there can be this belief that our soul chooses the lessons we need to learn in this lifetime. And I'm going to say with my complex trauma clients, if that's true, some bit off way more than they could chew and regret their soul's choice, right? And so it may not always be accurate or even a good or helpful thing to think about. But maybe for those of us who don't have all of that, we can consider that we're here to learn and grow. We have this opportunity to learn and grow because of something called pain, because of something called discomfort. Because when everything's lovely, I'm gonna tell you what, no one comes into therapy on their best day. No one starts therapy and comes in and I'm like, oh, so what brings you in? You know, I don't even know. My life is perfect. Yeah, everything's great. Yeah, it's really good. It's amazing. And by the way, I'm feeling really enlightened. Yeah, that's awesome. Right? People come to therapy or coaching because they have a problem. They're having a hard time with something. It's that pain, it's that discomfort that drives us. to heal, grow, and evolve. And so while some of this work can be uncomfortable, that's kind of the point. Our life will drop little pebbles of discomfort. And if we notice them and we're like, okay, what's that one about? Then we can work through it. But sometimes if we don't catch the pebbles, it'll drop rocks. And it's like, oh, that's a little more painful. What's the lesson there? It gets our attention. And sometimes if we are not paying attention, you ever notice how like patterns come back over and over again until you do something about it? Sometimes we get a big freaking boulder and it's like, oh, that's painful. But then we definitely learn and grow from that. I mean, I hope so. It's like, okay, what do I need? I need to do something different because I'm not doing that again. So where I sit in my experience with all the people I've sat with over years of therapy, years of teaching yoga, just even years of being human and listening to people, because I'm a therapist. So people just tell me stuff. What I've noticed is everyone has their healing work here to do. Even if you're like, yeah, my family was perfect, it's great. I guarantee that you still face challenges. And maybe you don't have as much work to do as other people do in this lifetime. I don't know what that's about. But if things aren't working for you inside your business or with your ADHD, and you're setting your life and your business up the ADHD way, maybe you're even doing some IFS or some other somatic healing approach, and you're not seeing any movement, I would encourage you to get really curious, to sit in the silence if you can tolerate it, do some writing, be in nature, go for a walk, lean in and get super curious about what's going on. All right, y'all. It was fun. I'm glad you're here. I mean, kind of fun. I kind of dropped some heavy stuff, but hopefully it was interesting at least. I look forward to connecting with you soon. And if you're not following already, please follow. And I would love it if you shared the Self Love Woman Way podcast. All right, take care.